These Azure SQL products are overwhelming. I need help!
Have no fear, I have this exact script in my massive library of things.
Wow.
May I be of service, sir?
Yes, I need my Azure SQL script so I can record my next video. No time to waste! Hello everyone, and welcome to another exciting episode of Synextra's Azure Masterclass. I'm Ryan, and today we dive into the world of Azure SQL. Choosing the right Azure SQL product is your kryptonite, then you're in the right place. By the end of this session, you'll have an overview of the different database products on Azure, and we'll do a deep dive into the three Microsoft SQL solutions. We'll cover cost considerations, a deep dive into some of the technical differences for each of the products, and finally some use cases. Whether you're a seasoned IT pro or taking your first steps up the mountain that is Microsoft Azure, allow me to be your guide today. Let's get started. Overview of Azure database products. Databases on Azure come in many different flavors. Transact SQL, foreshadowing, MySQL, NoSQL, PostgreSQL, MQL, CQL, and within all of these, there are different ways to deliver, partition, and scale all of them. There's a huge amount of options, and it's as flexible as you need it to be. There are, however, three key products we're going to focus on in Azure SQL. These are especially relevant if you're coming from a Microsoft house where you'll have been using Microsoft SQL Server, i.e. Transact SQL, TSQL. Within these three products, they cover a range of use cases designed to meet the myriad of database requirements that a modern organization has. Let's jump in and break them down. Azure SQL Database. This is a fully managed relational database with AI-driven features to optimize performance and security. It's ideal for modern cloud applications that require scalability, high availability, and seamless integration with other Azure services. Azure SQL Managed Instance. This provides a managed SQL Server instance with broad SQL Server compatibility. So it's perfect for an organization that's looking to lift and shift on-premises SQL up to the cloud with minimal changes. It combines the best of SQL Server with all the benefits of a fully managed service, including automatic updates, backups, high availability, security. That's handled because it's SQL as a service via a managed instance. And then the last option is what you all know and love, SQL Server on an Azure virtual machine. So this is SQL Server, Microsoft SQL running on a Windows server in Azure. It's obviously not as easily scalable as Azure SQL Database, as it is a Windows machine that you would have to edit if you needed to change. It's not as hands-off management as SQL Managed Instance, but of course offers full control of your SQL Server with the flexibility of being an Azure VM. It's the best choice for applications that require specific SQL Server features and configurations that aren't available in the managed options. That's the overview done. Now let's jump into pricing. Cost considerations for Azure SQL. Cost is a critical factor when choosing the right Azure SQL product. Let's explore the considerations for each of the three options. Azure SQL Database. There are two main pricing models, DTU based and vCore based. DTU was the original option. It's also the simplest. It bundles together everything that you could need for cost regarding SQL into one option. Compute, storage, IOPS, it's a DTU. It's a single database transmission unit. Great for an infrastructure team. You need to move your product up and you can scale it up and down as you require. Now, the second option that was introduced more recently, this is vCores. It provides more flexibility, see complexity, by allowing you to independently scale compute and storage. Great for a database administrator who has the experience for granular optimization. With either option, you'll pay for what you allocate, starting from $8 a month on the most simple basic package. You can also investigate automatic scaling for dynamic workloads. This can be very cost effective for apps that scale up and down throughout the day or even throughout the year. SQL Managed Instance. The pricing model for SQL Managed Instance is based on vCores, so you effectively build a virtual machine starting at $800 a month. You choose the CPU, standard or premium, you choose the amount of vCores that you want, which comes with an allocated amount of RAM, and then you have options for business critical or general purpose. Business critical, high performance, high availability. General purpose, more cost effective. It's important to balance performance needs within budget constraints. Azure SQL is so flexible though, you can scale up and down almost as you need while it's live. So you do have the flexibility to work around what your requirements are. SQL Server on Azure VMs. Exactly as per any VM in Azure, you choose the SKU that you want, you make a virtual machine and you put SQL on it. You then do have to consider SQL Server licensing. This obviously provides the most flexibility because it's just a machine and you can choose very specifically the SKU that you want. So you've got a lot more flexibility, but I would recommend, however, this is option C when SQLMI and SQLDB aren't available for your database. If you're an organization that is looking to modernize its IT, you'll want to use PaaS and SaaS products wherever they're available. We have references for all of this in the description below. Deep dive into Azure SQL options. Each Azure SQL product offers different ways to optimize performance and cost. Let's dig deeper into some of these options. So what we've got here, we've got a SQL Server on Azure. This doesn't hold the data itself. You create a database inside that. This is where you would set up the network, where you would turn on Defender, which is probably an essential nowadays. But let's jump in and let's create a database. So we're happy with these. It's production environment. And then here. So let's jump into compute and storage. Let's configure this database. So service tiers that we mentioned earlier, we've got vCore, DTU. Then we've got general, hyperscale, business critical, basic, standard, premium. These are a one-to-one match of what they mean. This is probably going to be the most common option that people would choose, standard or hyperscale. So let's just choose the standard for DTU here. So this is the most simple database you can make. We've got 10 DTUs. So this is the unit that we mentioned earlier. This includes all levels of performance, the IOPS, the CPU, the RAM, everything is encompassed inside a DTU. It's really simple. And once you start using your database, you get a graph and you can see how many you need. Are you ever capping? Do we need to increase that? Max database size is also linked to this. So watch this. We've got the price here as well. This is only $18 a month for something this nice and small and simple. So let's drag that. Let's make it a little bit larger. There you go. So you can see once we hit 100, we now can make our database much larger. The price is relative to that as well, of course. And then let's keep going all the way up. So the largest one that we can do is 3,000 DTUs, a terabyte database, and we're talking $5,500 a month on the standard tier. So that's the biggest one that we can make. Let's just go on premium as well, just to see what the options are. So obviously highest availability and performance. We know the hidden word that's missing from that as well. So the maximum DTUs that we can get on premium is 4,000, so it's more, but then again, it's the reliability. It's the uptime that you get with premium. And performance, slightly stronger, a little bit better, higher maximum size that you can do, which doesn't really seem to affect the cost. And that's an overview of how the DTU pricing model works for a Azure SQL database. You can see there's lots of options to play around with for DTUs, and you can use vCore if you really want to get into the granular changes there. Basic generally suitable for small databases with light workloads. Standard will cover the majority of workloads. As we saw, this tier can scale down from £10 a month up to £5,000 a month. Premium scales similar to the standard tier, but has higher performance, and you pay for it, as we saw. A huge benefit of Azure SQL as well is scalability. There's an option called Elastic Pools, and it allows you to pool resources for multiple databases within one set. So you can account for spikes in requirement and usage across multiple databases. Instead of scaling every single database for its 90th percentile, you can have a pool of them, share their resources, and that works across DTU or vCore as well. It's super flexible, as most things are with Azure SQL. Guaranteed consideration for anyone would be security as well. Defender is a tick box. Turn that on. You've got Defender for Cloud. You can set logs up. So now you can feed that into your SIEM tool, whatever you're using. Advanced threat protection, always encrypt. There's security options that you can do around that, and you'll probably want most of them in a modern IT infrastructure. Now let's jump over to SQL Managed Instance, where there's the perfect option to abstract SQL away from its operating system, but still retain all of the functionality of Microsoft SQL Server. Let's jump in now and see what some of the options are if we're looking around the vCores and seeing how we can scale our own database. Let's create a SQL Managed Instance. Okay, here we are. This is the beginnings of a SQL Managed Instance. I've clicked Create. We're instantly on the basics page, and we've already got a cost in front of us, as we can see. We've given it a name, we put it in a region, and then what we're going to do now, we're going to configure the scale of this managed instance. So now, do we want general purpose, business critical? Let's go for general purpose. Let's leave it there for now. And then again here, what compute hardware do you want? This is what I mentioned before, which CPU. So do you want standard, premium, or premium with memory optimized? We'll keep it on standard here. So we're going to get 5 gig of RAM roughly per vCore. So here we're going to have 8 vCores. This is where it starts on. We've got 8 vCores. We've got 256 gig of storage. So you can see what this is costing us straight away. Compute, this is the bulk of the cost. So we're looking instantly at $1,700 a month. Storage for 256 gig is absolutely nothing in comparison, at least to this one. And then now let's have a look at the premium business critical. Let's see what the price difference would look like. Business critical. Now let's go for premium series for the processing as well. There we go. So price went up a little bit, but The maximum size that you can make this managed instance is huge in comparison to SQL database. And then storage again, storage scales, and you're paying for your storage here. Again, it's an overall small price to pay compared to the actual vCore price. And there's an overview of how the prices work. So as you can see, there's lots of options to configure your SQL Managed Instance as well. You can scale it up and down as much as you want. Managed Instance includes built-in high availability with automatic failover within availability zones. Helps ensure that your application remains online. One of the key benefits of Azure SQL Managed Instance is integration. Full compatibility with SQL Server features. So again, you abstract away the operating system. You don't need to worry about that. Microsoft handles that. For you, it's just a portal and a bunch of checkboxes, which is great if you're looking at blueprinting deployments, or even if you're looking at infrastructure as code as well, because now you can make the server that you need with a PowerShell script, and Azure CLI, Terraform, however you want to do it, you can also just deploy it that way. Now let's talk SQL Server on Azure VMs. Obviously, if you've made a VM on Azure, you know how that works. There's many SKUs. Some of them have got more memory. Some of them are optimized for different items, but you can choose the exact build that you need for the server. Premium SSDs are an option as well, in case you need more disk performance. It just works the same as building any virtual machine on Azure. In the instance that you can't use SQL MI and SQL DB, there is another benefit to rehoming your on-prem Windows SQL Server up to Azure, and that is SQL backups and insights. You can install an agent which enables backups. These can then back up your SQL databases into Azure, and then you've got more visibility of the database there. And the insights as well can let you see exactly how the server is working. Is the server handling the workload that you're giving it with the specification that it's now got today? One use case that I've had myself recently is where a SQL server, we need to move it up to Azure. We want to do the migration. We want to do the optimization. We want to refactor the database. SQL MI seems the best option based on the scale of this product. The consideration I've got, however, is we also need something to do SQL Server reporting services. We need something for SSRS. So do we go for SQL MI, optimize the service there as PaaS, or do we get a really powerful SQL Server Windows Azure VM that's about the same price that can take care of the SSRS as well as the SQL Server database? Just something that you might have to consider. If you have one database doing lots of roles right now, that may not translate one-to-one with what's available with SQL MI, SQL DB. Now let's look at some use cases for the different options. Azure SQL Database, ideal for SaaS applications that require multi-tenancy, rapid scaling. Also, as we've seen, it can scale small, whereas it doesn't have to start instantly at a medium size like SQL MI does, or even a virtual machine may. So SQL Database, it can start small, it can scale massively, really flexible. Very simple example of where the scaling could come in handy is an online retailer that has a store, and maybe one specific day a year, like Black Friday, their requirement of usage is 10 times higher than normal. So having an elastic database that can just scale to that, brilliant. You don't need to think about that, but it could just be a case of every Tuesday night at a specific time, an advert is sent out and now more traffic comes into the website, 3 to 4 times more than normal. This can scale for that for you. So you don't need to worry about that. You can automate all of this with Azure SQL Database. Azure SQL Managed Instance. So it's perfect for migrating on-prem SQL Server workloads with minimal changes. Azure SQL itself, Azure SQL Database, might not always be compatible, but Azure SQL Managed Instance will be compatible with your SQL Server. A great example is a company looking to move their core business system to the cloud. They can leverage Managed Instance for its SQL Server compatibility because we know that it doesn't work with Azure SQL Database. It will work with Managed Instance. You get all the benefits of abstracting the OS away. You can just turn on security features and then have that managed via PaaS. SQL Server on Azure VMs, we've covered this. We understand what this is for. This is when you can't use the PaaS options. You just have to bite the bullet, accept that you're going to be running an operating system, all the requirements of the operating system. You're going to be consuming memory via maybe a web browser. You're going to be consuming memory via an antivirus. Anything that runs on a Windows machine that you need to have it function as part of your business, you're also paying overhead. Potentially no reason unless you can't use MI or SQL DB. An example of when you would want this is healthcare provider requires very custom specific SQL Server configurations for their patient data management. They could use SQL Server on Azure VM to ensure they still comply with all the regulations, but now they are in the cloud. So it's the backup, resiliency, DR, all those options are there, and they're very easy to just turn on because it's just the same as any other VM. Consideration, obviously, you now have another virtual machine to manage, secure, backup, and again, the overhead that we've already mentioned. Now, let's have a look at some qualifications that might be useful if you're interested in SQL databases. So this is the Microsoft Azure qualifications roadmap, if you will. There's obviously a lot of qualifications, and trying to choose the right one might be difficult if you're not as well versed on the field. So let's have a look here. So one of the ones that I would recommend for anyone is the Azure Administrator Associate. It's the most grounded qualification you can get if you have some IT experience. The 900 is the fundamentals. This is probably skip that if you've got a few years experience, especially if you've done anything in Azure and just researched the 104. This is the enhanced version of the 900. Gives you a great grounding in three of the most important things on Azure, which is compute, network, and storage. There are more items in there, but they cover the bulk of what most organizations are going to be using. Then the second qualification that I would mention is the DP300. This is the Azure Database Administrator. This exam is the Azure SQL exam. It covers the three products that we've been talking about today: Azure SQL, SQL MI, and SQL Server on Azure. It's recommended that you're a DBA before taking this exam because it is specialized towards that skill set. But there are no exam prerequisites. You don't have to have already sat the 104 or 900 to be able to do a database administrator exam. Again, we've got links in the show notes to both of these qualifications, this roadmap, as well as any of the useful Microsoft Learn pages that link to all of the information that we've spoken about today. And that's a wrap for today's Azure Masterclass on Microsoft Azure SQL. I hope you now have a better understanding of the different Azure SQL products, their cost considerations, and how to choose the right option for your needs. If you have any questions or want to dive deeper into any of the topics that we've covered today, feel free to reach out to us. Stay tuned for more insightful sessions from Synextra. Cheers and happy learning.
Action.
Oh, I think I've activated Greek. Oh, there's a button at the bottom. I can click it. There we go, English UK.